Have you ever had a gut feeling that something just didn't feel right? Or maybe you thought about someone and in the next couple minutes they gave you a call or they knocked on your door. Or maybe you've had a dream before that actually ended up coming true. Maybe sometimes you just kind of get a feeling for something that later ends up also being like strangely true. So, if this is you, then you might be interested in this episode. We're going to be diving into what exactly intuition is, how that relates to your inherent psychic abilities, and how that can really show up in your life through all of the five different senses that we all have. So, this is going to be kind of a deep dive, mystical look into, who we are, the knowledge that we have, but also how can we start to tap into knowledge that is beyond what we would expect to like know from our own lives and from our own sort of lived experiences. So we're going to dive into like what is intuition. We'll talk about how these abilities show up through the different five senses. And we're going to talk about like what this psychic awareness is. I'm going to give examples from my own personal life. And we might even talk about, well, we will talk about signs that you might be psychic. So these will be showing up if you're really developing these sensitivities and if you're like quite tuned in to like what it is available to you. I'm going to be sharing my personal psychic stories, a little bit of my journey, and my background of, how kind of the event that really kickstarted all of this. And really, this episode kind of marks like a psychic coming out of the closet for me. I've been doing all of this really intensely now for probably at least 3 years, going like super deep dive, reading all about it, developing my own psychic sensitivities. So if you've ever wondered, like, what is this stuff about? Is being psychic even real? What does it mean? Then I think this episode is going to be for you, and keep listening. I think it's going to be really cool because if you are at least somewhat interested in these topics, that would be a sign that you've probably had some of these experiences and you're also like very highly tuned to what this means. So growing up, I was always really interested in weird stuff or, like quote, weird stuff. I was really into mind reading. Like, what was that? Can I make it happen? Can I tell someone to like think a thought and they think it? Can I look at someone and like make them turn around? I was really into like hypnosis. Also interested in, but also extremely scared of death in a way that was like, oh, I know that exists, but like what happens after death? And that would scare me to death. And but I would still think about it. And although all of these topics were really scary to me, I also thought they were very magical and fascinating. I also remember receiving a bag of crystals probably when I was like 5 or 6, just like a little crystal set in this like beautiful lace crocheted bag with like a pink ribbon on it. It was just like so gorgeous. And I treasured that for years. I still have it. I just remember pulling out these crystals and being just enamored by them and their beauty and how different what they were and the colors and how they looked, and just would like hold them and look at them and love them. And this was all stuff that like I just thought was a passing interest, even though it was all kind of like a little spooky. Never in my wildest imagination did I think any of it was like remotely real. I kind of secretly wanted it to be, but I didn't know. And you just think like, oh, that stuff's fake, or you see it in movies and you think it isn't real. But what I found is it's not just content for movies. It's not just like the fun, crazy witch that's depicted in the cartoons. These topics are traditionally like made the scary character, or like they're mocked or they're made fun of. But about 25 years later, I had a really profound experience with my intuition that really quite profoundly changed like the course of my life and how seriously I took intuition from that moment on, and also like psychic awareness and sensitivity. So eventually I learned that this experience I had was clairsentience coming through, and that made me like a true believer. And I vowed to myself, like at that event, I was like, I will never not take my intuition seriously again. So to give you what that story was, I've talked about this before. I was on a motorcycle road trip by myself, but I've never really told the full story. And so that's what I'm going to tell you today. Um, I was on a motorcycle road trip by myself, and I was in the Black Hills of South Dakota. It was phenomenal, phenomenal road trip. I loved every second of it. It was just incredible. And one night I had no accommodation planned. I was just like in the national state, Custer State Park, I think, and kind of near the Needles Highway. So I'm riding my motorcycle, just like, oh, I'll figure it out. I'll find a campground. I'll just like pop my tent somewhere. So it was getting dark, and I was getting a little nervous because I don't like riding at night, but also like I hadn't figured out where I was going to camp. So I pulled into the state park. I talked to a ranger. He was like, yeah, look, there's this free campground. If you park at this pullout and then walk a couple steps, you're technically in the national forest, and that's all free camping. So like anywhere you want to go, it's like free for you, go for it. So I thought that's amazing. And, about 40 minutes later, I find myself pulling into this little gravel pullout, and there was one other vehicle there, but it was totally deserted. Again, like it was nightfall, and I was like, cool, this is it. Like, this is what you talked about. I could see the border. The national forest was right behind the fence. And I killed engine kill switch, so turned my motorcycle off. And I just had this like really deep, uneasy feeling in my body that something was not right. And I looked around and I thought, well, there's no one around. Clearly, these other people are like camping somewhere else or, far away. That's fine. And I couldn't find a reason why I was so uncomfortable. And I had no other option. So I just was like, I have to camp here. Like the next town is an hour away with a campground. It's dark now, and I don't want to hit a buffalo because there's a lot of buffalo in this area. And I was like, cool, no, this is it. I posted up, I started making dinner, and I just could not shake this really deeply unnerving feeling of like ill fate. And I walked around the whole, pull out, trying to find service because I had sketchy cell phone service. And I was, walking around like literally, in the old days when you would like hold your phone up to try and find signal, I'm like walking around for 30 minutes trying to find signal. And I got like this one, like 2 bars or something that was enough to send 2 of my best friends back in Minnesota a pin on where I was staying that night. And I had been out for like 5 nights already, and like not once had I ever shared my location. Not once had I ever felt so desperate that I needed someone to know where I was and that I was okay. And like, if you don't find me in the morning, like come check this location. So all that to say, I was like really fucking nervous, but I had no logical reason for any of this. So I make dinner, hella uncomfortable, go and set up my tent. I'm setting up my tent in the trail of this national forest, excuse me. And I'm probably like a couple minutes into setting up my tent. It's like mostly set up. And I hear a gunshot go off extremely, extremely close to me. And this hasn't really happened to me before. So gunshots are loud. They're scary as fuck. But this was extremely close, like 20 yards or less close to me, extremely close. And after the gunshot, I hear footsteps running very fast in my direction. Two footsteps and two pairs of footsteps, and I'm like, fuck, what do I do? I'm literally stuck. My bike is like 30 yards away. My tent is on the trail. They're going to see my tent. They're going to know someone's here. They're going to see my bike. So I jumped to the side of my tent, there was like a little kind of creek ravine thing. So I just kind of jumped in there and heard these footsteps run past my tent, clearly like seeing that I was here, jumped in their car, and I believe they stayed in their car. They turned all the lights off. It was so creepy. They turned all their lights off. They didn't even start the car straight away, like almost like they were hiding. And I was like, I didn't know if they shot the gun or someone shot at them or if they were shooting an animal. Like, I had no context for this. This all just happened in maybe like a 30-second time frame. And I thought, well, they know I'm here. They know where my vehicle is. They know I can't escape. So I am stuck. And after a long amount of time, they drove away, and then I eventually came back to just like, I don't know, like, I'm here, they know I'm here, like, I'll put up a fight if it comes to that. I had like a 2-inch, like, Stanley knife or something. I don't know what they're called, like a pocket knife, like a Swiss Army knife, 2-inch. It was pathetic. But I was like, I guess they're here, they know where my tent is. I will deal with it when it happens. Like, otherwise, I'm going to stay the night. Don't make that decision again, Mel. Don't make that decision. And the rest of the night was fine. Like, I was really nervous, but I was just had kind of committed to that decision. And a couple other really weird mystical things happened that night that I want to share, like, in the light of this episode, that I went to sleep. I actually was like okay going to sleep. And I woke up kind of a couple times throughout the night and just like with this vision of these bare feet standing outside the door to my tent. And these feet were protective and they were here to help me. And they were like I just had this overwhelming sense of protection that I was going to be okay. And that like something, someone, some essence was there to make sure I was going to be okay. And as soon as I kind of that vision came in for me, I was like, oh, no, it's okay. Like, go to sleep, Mal. Go to sleep. It's fine. Next day, all was fine. I just packed up and left ASAP. And that event to me showed me the power of my intuition, the fact that I was alert to this. Subconsciously, I was alert to like something was going to go down. I had no logical reason to explain it. And yet I didn't take any action. And then a crazy thing happened that could have led to some really bad outcomes. So I want to jump into what is intuition and why does it matter? So your intuition is really your inner knowing. It's kind of like the north, like on a compass. It's your true north. It's your like magnetic north of like what is real for you, what is true. And it kind of comes into your body as like a feeling, a sense. It's just like knowing something without actually having a logical reason to know it. It comes through really subtly, but the more you tune into it, the more you pay attention, the more powerful like the essence or kind of the flow of it. And you'll start to pick up more of your intuitive sense and your intuitive direction. So everyone has intuition. It's just a matter of like whether you're aware of it and how much attention you're paying to it, and what your intention is. Because, I think I was in my example, I was like, that doesn't make sense. That's stupid. That's dumb. So now for me, when I am kind of starting to argue with my intuition, that's really a red flag to be like, hey, Mel, I think there's actually something to pay attention to. Like if you're convincing yourself not to believe something that you already have no reason to believe, then like something's going on here. You need to pay attention. So an example for this would be like if you've ever walked into a room and you're just like, whoa, this room is super cold. Something just went down. Like this is ice cold. Or maybe you'll walk into a room and you'll be like, wow, it's like so warm here. It's so beautiful. Like you're picking up on, these kind of intuitive senses. And that's really just like an example of how your intuition comes through. So it is an inner knowing, but it also speaks through and kind of channels through your psychic senses to give you the information that is kind of unexplained, that you would sort of be like, oh, I have no reason to know that, and yet I still do. So I'll give you a couple examples of that. So, like, it comes through your five senses. So we've got seeing, hearing, feeling, uh, knowing, and then like the taste, smell kind of senses. And I believe like through all of those five senses, you kind of get that sixth sense, which is really your extra sensory perception. You're kind of picking up on information that you go like, wait a minute, I shouldn't know that, but I do. So we're going to break down what those are. The first one you may have heard of, it's kind of the most common. It's called clairvoyance. And to break down that term, actually, I think is really interesting. It's a conjunction of two French words. So clair means clear or like transparent or to like see through something. And then voyance being like seeing something. So really clear vision or clear seeing. And this sense is if you're going to be receiving those intuitive hits through like visions that flash through your mind. You might also see symbols recurring of kind of, oh, I get this symbol all the time, like what does this symbol mean? Or even you'll get mental images of like maybe a scene playing out, um, and it's very visual. So it's something that you see in your mind's eye. It's not something that like I'm looking at out my window and this is like literal happening. It's like I can just be daydreaming and these visions are coming through my mind's eye of something that I can then interpret. And an example of this would be like if you see a flash of something before it happens. So I remember when I lived in Minnesota, we were packing up our lives, moving to Australia, and I was selling my beloved BMW K75. And I had it listed on Facebook. I was selling it like it was all clean and ready to roll. But I was like, oh, I love that bike so much. I would love to take it for like a final lap, just like go for a couple more rides and just like really kind of have some nice closure with that bike. And one morning I was meditating and just a flash came through that I was riding my motorcycle and I came off it and had an accident. And I just immediately sort of flashed back to like waking state because I was just so shocked. And I was like, oh, okay, like I'm not going to ride my bike one more time. That vision was too real. It was too vivid. I saw myself coming off my bike and the handlebars going down. And I just thought, no, like I'm freaking out. Like my body is getting goosebumps just thinking about it. And I just remember thinking, I'm not riding that again. Message received, thank you. And then I didn't ride it and I sold it a few days later. So that's an example of like getting that information and just like going with it, and taking action or not taking action. So that's just one example that was like so vivid and clear and just flashed through my mind that um, comes to mind. You might even be listening to this and be like, oh, like I remember a time where I had, a flash come through and then it led to this outcome. That I would never have known. And in that situation, like I'd never come off my bike. I didn't know what that would look like. I, it wasn't an outcome that I'd ever considered. So I was like really freaked out by that vision. So the second psychic sense that we talk about is called clairaudience. So clair, again, being the French word for clear, and then audience being like the auditory function. So clear hearing would be like the translation for this one. So this is really if you like hear something in your mind, like an inner voice, or it feels like an external voice kind of coming in at you, but it's separate from your own thoughts. It might even be like contradictory or something that you're not even thinking about. So an example of this would be if you hear a phrase like turn left, you just imagine you're out driving your car and you hear someone say turn left. And you're like, no, but I'm not going left. I'm going straight. And you're like, oh fuck, I'll turn left. Okay. And then later you realize maybe on your original route there is an accident or something that you would have encountered that maybe would have led to a bad outcome. I've had an example where I have been dreaming and I've heard a voice come through that would say like, enough, like, you're done dreaming, Mel, wake up. I've had other voices come through that say just like, wake up. And then I'd wake up and my son would be crying, or like I would have some kind of urgent thing that I needed to attend to. Those are a couple examples of how clairaudience comes through. I always am usually kind of like a little bit freaked out because I'm not expecting it when it comes through. So that would be a sign that it's clairaudience and not just like the radio that you're like hearing in the background, or someone else's voice that you're overhearing from the neighbors. The third psychic sense or sensitivity is clairsentience. This is clair feeling. This is really that gut feeling of like, ooh, that feels good, or like, ooh, I have a bad feeling about that or that person. It's really very visceral. It's like a very in your body kind of physical reaction to something. So when I told you that story at the start on my solo motorcycle camping trip, I pulled up, I turned my motorcycle off, and I could just feel something bad was going to happen. I felt it and I couldn't explain it. But I camped there anyway, and I made the decision to like ignore that. And then the gun went off and it was like super duper scary. So the clairsentience is feeling that something's going to happen, having a bad feeling about someone, having a good feeling. That's the other thing. If you pay attention to the language that you use, that'll be a good indication of like which one of these senses you kind of favor. So if you say a lot like, I feel really good about this, or no, I feel like this is a good choice, or I feel like she's going to be great for the role, then that can kind of be a sense of like you lean into that clairsentient side. If you, for example, say like you're more stronger on the clairvoyant side, you would say something like, I really see that vision for you. I really see this working out well for me. I can see this leading to a good result. Those are sort of the language pieces that you'll pick up on. So the fourth indication, or the fourth sort of psychic sense that you'll come up with, or maybe you've experienced, is called claircognizance. So this is really like that clear knowing of just like, you get just like an intuitive hit, an intuitive download of, oh, I knew that. So some indicators of that in like language that you use would be like, I knew that was going to happen. I knew you were going to say that. I knew that I could do it, or I knew that I was going to accomplish that. These are things that you just know are going to happen without actually like truly knowing, or like knowing how it's going to happen. You're just like, oh yeah, I knew that was going to happen. So to give you a couple examples, I knew my cousin had her baby the morning she had it. And so I just like, I woke up, I knew this, I had dreamt about a baby. I dreamt about her partner, like bringing a baby to come hang out with us. And I dreamt that the child had dark, like fluffy, kind of crazy hair. So I woke up and I was like, I knew that they'd had their baby. So I sent some messages around, and later that night we found out that they did. A couple other ones is like I knew that I was pregnant straight away with my first child. With my second child, I think I might have known like the next day that I was pregnant. Just stuff like that. It's like you just know, but you don't know why you know or how you know. It's almost like you're tapping into like some greater piece of knowledge and knowingness. And you're just like, oh yeah, I knew that was going to happen. So that one's really fun. Happens a lot. I think a lot of people have claircognizance without realizing it. So the fifth one is really interesting. So this one, well, I'm gonna put these together because they're both somewhat rare. I've only had them once or twice in my life. So clairgustance is having the taste like a clear taste sense. And then the clairaudience, I think is how I say it, is when you have like a smelling sense for like psychic abilities. So to break those down, clairgustance is when you have like you smell a smell that you have no reason to be smelling. So to give an example, I was overseas when my maternal grandmother passed, and for several days, it was really upsetting being overseas when my family was going through that. I couldn't go to the funeral. I wasn't there when she passed on, and she was just like on my mind a lot. And then 2 days in those probably like 3 following days after I learned of her passing, I would just be in my office and journaling, and I would smell like her fragrance, and I just knew that that was Nana. And this can also come up for you if you have lost a loved one, or they've passed on. You can kind of pick up on that scent of that person, or maybe something that they love or something that they did. So like I don't know, say if back in the olden days when you would smoke pipes, like that smell is like that fragrance is quite distinct. Or say like they liked a certain food, and as soon as you always had that food, you thought of this person. You would maybe smell that smell and just be like, oh, like my great uncle's here, he came to say hi. The other one would be like if you tasted a taste that reminded you of someone. So that would be like, I don't know, if someone really loved chocolate and you were like, oh, I didn't eat chocolate for the last week, but I have like a very vivid taste of that, and that reminds you of that person. It might be like a message from that other side. It can also be information on anything else that is kind of relevant to like whatever that symbolizes for you. Like I said, this has only really happened a couple times for me when I smelt my Nana's perfume. And yeah, I think it's quite a tough one because it just happens. And I'm not sure how you learn that or how you teach that, because even I had no really awareness of what this was when it was happening to me. And those are really kind of the 5 general psychic senses or sensitivities that you can develop by tuning your intuition and starting to tap into like these greater kind of channels of information. It's super fun. So I want to go through some signs that you might be psychic. So maybe when I was running through all that, you're like, oh, actually, I kind of resonate with that one, or that's happened to me. Very strange. And you kind of might be going, oh, like I feel like I kind of am more clairvoyant or more clairsentient. So, but how do you know? Like my question was like, how do you know that this is real? How do you know if this is legit? And I want to be clear that, I'm saying that, you can develop your psychic senses, but everyone has these inherently. And we have forgotten this over the centuries. But in ancient civilizations, in ancient communities and cultures, like everyone had this. And I believe it is my belief that everyone kind of had like a specific way to do this. So, like the community healers would be quite gifted maybe in clairvoyance or, seeing the future. And people would go to them to sort of tap into that and use that skill. I believe that everyone is psychic, and these profound abilities are inherent. Everybody has them. It's just a matter of how much you believe that you have it and also how much you're tuned into it. But they're our birthright, and everyone can tap into this higher consciousness. Even if you're sitting there thinking, actually, no, I don't have any of that, it doesn't mean that you can't have it. It just means that there may be like a little bit more work to do. So I want to take you through a couple common signs that your psychic senses are developing or even becoming stronger. So the first one is like if you have vivid dreams. So maybe you remember your dreams when you wake up, and there is an element of like finding out later that the dream came true. That's what's called precognition, is like knowing something before it's going to happen. Even if your dreams aren't necessarily precognitive or you haven't really determined that yet, you can still get some amazing psychic insights from your dreams. I've received profound messages from past loved ones in dreams. I've received really strong mental transmissions from like earthside loved ones on, experiences they were going through, like their mindset. And I've woken up in the morning being like, oh shit, I need to like call this person. I dreamt about my son, what he looked like months before I even got pregnant. I have received really important information about decisions that I've been kind of grappling with in my waking life that I've been able to resolve in my dreams. And for example, like crazy, this topic is so left field of anything I've ever done on the podcast. Typically, this podcast is business related, self-improvement, it's mindset. But the idea for this episode specifically came to me in a dream. And I was sitting at my laptop, opening Asana, looking at my content planner. And on the top of my planner, it said, there was an episode that said, "Are you psychic? Signs that you are psychic." And I woke up and I was like, are you kidding me? I literally dreamed that I was planning to do an episode about being psychic. This was in my dream. Very visual, like very crystal clear. And I just remember being like super hesitant. Like, I can't come out of the psychic closet. What would people think? People are going to hate it. People are going to think I'm loco. Mel, this is not a good idea. And that probably happened about 2 weeks ago. I'm not going to lie. No, might have even been more. Like, I've sat on this for ages. I've sat down at my laptop and procrastinated about planning this episode. What am I going to write about? What stories am I going to tell? And then today I was just like, stop it. Just like, do it. You just have to do it. Just follow the guidance and trust that it's going to make sense. Just go with it. But basically, like, really any information that comes from your dreams that goes beyond what would you normally know. Like, it's not just rehashing, mundane events from your day, but it's like seems to have a more important value to it, or like it leaves an impression when you wake up and you're like, whoa, that dream made me feel something. If you think about it throughout the day and you're like, wow, that dream like resonated and like really hit a chord for me, that might be a signal that that dream was something bigger, and that might have been like some psychic information coming to you that you might want to think about, journal on, and act on. The next way that you want to start paying attention to, like, are you psychic? How is this developing for you? Is when you think of someone. So if you think about a friend or a family member that you don't talk to or you don't see very often, and then they reach out to you, like in the next day, the next minute, they show up at your house unexpectedly, this is a sign that you're really kind of stepping into this space. So you might even know what someone's going to say before you say it. This is called telepathy. This is where you are sort of sharing that, like you're sending out like that mental signal to someone who's like resonating on that same level as you. And I've done several tests on this personally, and with most specifically last week with a friend. And I was meditating and I was like, I thought of a friend, and I thought, I want her to reach out to me, like reach out to me soon in a crazy way. So like, I know this is going to be legit. And it didn't happen the next day. And I thought, oh man, I'm bummed. Like, I thought I was going to nail this, but it happened, I think, on the third day after that. She messaged me on Facebook on a completely unrelated topic, but was basically like, hey, what's up? Thinking of you. And I always thought telepathy was cray BS, like sci-fi movie stuff. But when you really just think of it as like sharing like a mental thought with someone that they pick up on, it's like radio waves. It's like, I'm recording on my microphone right now, but you're receiving it either on YouTube or in your headphones, and you're still receiving the message that I'm sending out, even though it's like different time, different place, different medium. That is really how I imagine telepathy to be. And that is a sign, if you have several of these experiences, that is a sign that you're starting to develop your psychic senses. Another one, if you think of someone and like legit the next second they call you, that's a sign that you're really like quite telepathically connected with them. You're kind of resonating on that same frequency. It might even be an indication that you're very close and bonded with this person. The other way you can know if you are developing your psychic senses is if you're picking up on people's emotions quite easily. This might be like really natural to you. So you might be super sensitive to someone's energy. Like I've had experiences where I can walk into a workplace and like look at everyone and be like, I know exactly their mindset today. I know how they're feeling. I know what they're up for. I know what I'm going to talk to them about. And you just kind of know that instinctually just by kind of observing that person. So this is you if you're quite empathic, if you're quite intuitive. You are probably especially good at reading a room. And again, just like knowing where someone is at, like mentally, emotionally, but also meeting them there. So I think that's where the empathic part comes in, is like being able to connect on that level with that person in a way that makes sense for them. So you're probably like a really good communicator. You're good at connecting with people. You have like a high emotional IQ. And the last one, that you know how you are developing these psychic abilities, is if you know things without knowing how. So again, with this claircognizance, sense, it's like you just feel something is true. Like you just know that something's going to happen. And an example, when I was telling people that I was pregnant, I still wasn't showing, and yet I told about 4 to 5 people face to face, and they all said, I knew it. I knew it. It's like, how did you, but what do you mean? Like, I see you like every 2 months. Like, we don't hang out regularly. That's why I'm telling you, because we don't hang out, you know? So, but they were all just like, yep, I knew it. Without even being around me, without even talking about this subject, they still knew. So that's an example of claircognizance in action. Even if you don't identify with the word psychic, even if you've never really explored these topics or done any reading or research, it's just like an indication of you have the ability, like it's already happening for you. And I would take that as a sign that you can go deeper on all of this and you can explore it. You can learn new things. You can have incredible insights to like your true nature, kind of as a soul on this planet, but like even beyond. And I think it really helps to understand like the true nature of life and living, and knowing how we're all connected. Because like if I can know what someone on the other side of the world is going through, that like who I'm already connected with, like that's pretty wild. So we can tap into this. You can start learning more about all of this. And I really hope this episode has helped shed light on what your intuition is. It's like that inner knowing, that north, that true north for you of like what is right and what feels good. But then also how that intuition starts to speak through your 5 senses and kind of start to pull out that information that's more of like the psychic unexplained ability. But more than any of that, I hope this episode has really showed you what's possible. Maybe it's kind of raised some questions for you to dig deeper into, and kind of shown that you are more than your experiences. You are more than the knowledge you learned at school. You are so, so much more than you've possibly ever dreamed of. And this world is amazing, incredible, and I'm so glad to be able to share it with you. I'm so glad that you've tuned into this. And I really hope you have an amazing day, my loves. And I will talk to you soon. If this topic resonated, if you're on YouTube or Spotify, leave me a comment and just engage with it, because whatever you like, I will most likely do more of. So I'd love to chat and hear about some experiences you've had in the psychic realm. All right, until next time, I love you so much.